It's just a shed, Lila. Insurance will cover it. Stop acting like someone died. My brother Caleb tilted the phone so I could see the smoke curling into the pale Colorado sky behind him. The front range looked calm, blue, untouched. Behind him, my backyard was a smear of black and gray. The little cedar workshop I built with my own hands was still smoldering. He wasn't crying. He looked irritated, like I had spilled coffee on his plans. My dog, Miso, was not in the frame. I searched the edges of the screen anyway, as if she might flicker into view. Caleb shifted the camera. Firefighters were packing hoses. One of them stepped around something on the grass and avoided looking down. My throat closed. "Where is she?" Caleb sighed. "Don't start. She ran off when the fireworks tipped. You know how jumpy she is. Mom's flight to Cabo boards in 3 hours. We don't need drama." I lay back against the stiff white pillow in St. Joseph Hospital in Denver, the plastic cervical collar pressing into my jaw. The CT images were still ghosting behind my eyelids. 2 cracked ribs, a concussion. I had tripped on the porch steps when the first explosion went sideways and the world went bright. The screen went black. Caleb had hung up. I stared at my reflection in the glossy surface of my phone. A bruise was spreading under my left eye like ink dropped in water. My chest rose in shallow, careful pulls. The air tasted metallic. Then a banner slid down from the top of the screen. Backyard camera, offline. My pulse slowed instead of spiking. That was Caleb's tell. He didn't panic. He managed. He unplugged. He erased. He thought if he cut the Wi-Fi and reset the router, the story would burn down with the wood. He forgot who he was dealing with. My name is Lila Moreno. I am 34 years old, and I am a compliance analyst for a regional bank in Boulder. I don't move money, I follow it. I track anomalies through spreadsheets until the lie blinks. Caleb might know how to light a mortar shell, but he doesn't understand that servers remember what people try to forget. I reached for my tote bag hanging from the metal IV pole. Pain flared down my side, hot and serrated, but I pulled my laptop onto the hospital tray. My right hand shook. My left was taped to my ribs. Battery, 6%. Of course. The hospital Wi-Fi lagged between 1 and 0 bars. I tethered to my phone. The connection hesitated, then locked. I logged into the home security dashboard. The live feed was gray static. Router offline. But the rolling cloud cache stores the last 30 minutes before interruption. It was buffering, waiting to be overwritten by the system reset Caleb would absolutely try once he found the breaker panel. I had a minute, maybe less. I clicked the file stamped 9:17 p.m. The download bar appeared, a thin green line inching forward. Estimated time, 40 seconds. I opened the preview while it saved. I needed to see it before it disappeared. The footage snapped into focus. There was Caleb in my backyard, shirt sleeves rolled up, grinning at something off camera. There were the fireworks he insisted were professional grade. There was my mother, Diane, in her linen jumpsuit, holding her phone high, angling for the skyline. "Do it again," she said. The neighbors won't mind. It's 4th of July. Caleb relit a mortar that had misfired. He leaned over it. It spit sparks like a fuse fighting back. He laughed. Then the tube tipped. The shell screamed sideways. It didn't arc toward the sky. It shot into the open door of the shed. The shed I built after my divorce. The shed where I sanded cedar and listened to late-night radio until the grief softened. The shed where Miso slept on her quilt because the garage made her anxious. The screen flared white, then orange. The inside of the shed bloomed with fire. Smoke rolled out, thick and tar black. I watched as Miso's small shape bolted to the doorway and recoiled from the heat. She barked, high and frantic. Caleb stepped back. Mom squealed, not in fear, in shock at the spectacle. "Oh my God, that's insane," she said, and kept filming. The fire extinguisher hung on the fence post, 6 feet away. No one reached for it. Caleb grabbed the cooler first. He dragged it aside so it wouldn't melt. He shouted at Mom to move her car out of the driveway. Miso darted again toward the doorway. The flames surged. The cedar caught like it had been waiting. I tasted bile. The download ticked. 62%, 74%. The hospital lights buzzed overhead, 89%. My fingers went cold, 97%, 99%. Download complete. The feed refreshed. Connection to server lost. The cache wiped clean. If I had blinked, the truth would have been smoke. I closed the laptop slowly. I did not cry. The grief was there, heavy and suffocating, but something harder was forming around it. They thought I was a liability in a hospital bed. They thought this was an accident with a deductible. I looked at the file on my desktop, fireworks, arson.mp4. I lay back and stared at the ceiling tiles. Numbers drifted in like a tide. $3,200. That was the monthly mortgage I covered for the craftsman in Fort Collins, with my name on the deed and my family living inside it. $1,150. The car payment for Mom's Lexus I co-signed when her credit dipped below polite conversation. $412. Caleb's truck insurance after his second DUI, because family helps family. I saw my studio apartment in Boulder, with the radiator that clanged like it was angry at winter. I saw the thrift store blazer I wore to my first audit committee meeting. I saw the student loan balance I chipped at while wiring money home, because Diane said stability was everything. Stability for whom? My phone buzzed. Diane calling. I swiped green and put it on speaker. "Lila," she said, her voice tight and airy at once. "Please tell me you're not making this a thing. It was a holiday. You know how boys are." "I am in a neck brace, Mom. I have 2 cracked ribs. Where is Miso?" Silence for half a breath. "She ran off, honey. Dogs sense things. We'll put up flyers. Don't start accusing your brother. He feels terrible." "He feels terrible?" I repeated. Caleb's voice floated in from somewhere near her. "Tell her to file the claim." Mom cleared her throat. "The shed is insured. You're good at forms. Just say it was a stray ember. No need to involve the city." The air in the room thinned. There it was. The pivot. In Diane's world, accountability was optional if paperwork was tidy. If something burned, you called it weather. If someone hurt, you called it fragile. "You want me to lie?" I said. "I want you to handle it like an adult," she corrected. "The flight board's at 5. Cabo is non-refundable. We deserve this trip. We've had a hard year." I stared at the laptop on the tray table. Fireworks, arson.mp4, glowed like a fuse waiting for a match. "I will handle it," I said. "Good," she replied, relief softening her edges. "I knew you would." The line clicked off. I listened to the steady beep of the monitor. Somewhere in the building, a cart rattled down a hallway. Outside, Denver's night settled over the mountains like nothing had happened. I picked up my phone and opened Instagram. Caleb had posted 12 minutes ago, a slow-motion clip of the skyline bursting in color. The caption read, "We lit up the night. #family first. #Independence Day." I zoomed in to the corner of the frame. There, at the edge of the lawn, was a smear of black climbing the fence, and in the reflection of the sliding glass door, a small shape near the threshold. I pressed my palm to my chest and felt the ache under the tape. They weren't sorry. They were packing for the airport. I zoomed in until the pixels broke apart. My analyst's eye doesn't look at the center. It looks at the margins. Caleb had cropped the flames, but he hadn't cropped himself. On the cuff of his white shirt was a dark spray, fine and directional, not ash, not soot drift, accelerant mist. The pattern flared out from the wrist like a cheap cologne ad. He hadn't just relit a mortar, he'd primed it. He'd poured something into the tube to make the spectacle bigger for Mom's camera. I lowered my phone and let the antiseptic air scrape the back of my throat. They didn't just gamble, they stacked the deck and called it a holiday. I thought about Miso's chin resting on my boot while I sanded cedar. I thought about how she waited for the click of my keyboard at midnight, like it was a cue that we were safe. I thought about the $3,200 leaving my account on the first of every month without fail. Stability for whom? I opened my text thread with Diane. "Don't get on that plane," I wrote. "The fire department will want statements. If you leave the state, it will look like flight." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Lila," she typed, "don't be dramatic. It was fireworks. The shed is insured. You always make everything legal."
I am making it accurate, I wrote back. There was a pause long enough for me to hear my own pulse in my ears. Then, "We'll talk when we land. Don't ruin this for us." Don't ruin this for us. The phrase sat there like a dare. She wasn't worried about the city. She wasn't worried about the neighbor whose fence caught a lick of flame. She was worried about boarding Group 1. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She had declined the life raft. I closed Instagram and opened my email. If she wanted me to handle it, I would handle it. Thoroughly. I logged into the homeowner's insurance portal. My name glowed under policyholder. Admin access. I bypassed file a claim. That button is for accidents. It is for people who tell stories. I went to special investigations and selected suspected intentional act disclosure. The form asked for narrative. I gave it data. Date, time, weather conditions, wind speed, proximity to structure. I attached fireworks_arson.mp4. I added a still frame of the accelerant spray on Caleb's cuff. Cause of loss. Deliberate ignition of consumer pyrotechnics directed into an occupied structure. Resident status, adult son. Additional risk factors. Prior alcohol-related offenses. I hit submit. The screen refreshed. A red banner unfurled across the top of the dashboard. Policy under review. Coverage suspended pending investigation. In insurance language, that is not a suggestion. That is a gate slamming. Without active coverage, a mortgage covenant trembles. I took a screenshot. I opened a new email to the Risk Management Department at Front Range Credit Union, the holder of the note on the Craftsman in Fort Collins. Subject: Notice of Hazard Insurance Suspension, Collateral Risk. I cited Section 9A of the Deed of Trust. Failure to maintain hazard insurance constitutes default. I attached the screenshot and the time-stamped disclosure confirmation. I wasn't asking them to look into it. I was notifying them that their collateral was a charred, uninsured structure. Banks do not debate risk, they quantify it. I hit send. The room felt colder. I logged into my bank app next. The Lexus payment auto-drafted from my account on the 15th. The truck insurance on the 21st. Caleb and Diane were authorized users on 2 of my credit cards. I didn't cancel them. I marked the cards compromised, lost or stolen, fraud alert placed, new numbers issued. The response was immediate. Cards deactivated, digital wallets disabled. A lock does not just stop spending, it stops momentum. My phone buzzed. Caleb. I let it ring twice and answered. "What did you do?" he said, voice already sharp. "My Apple Pay just failed at the liquor store." "It's the 4th, Lila. Fix it." I kept my tone level. "You poured accelerant into a mortar and fired it into an occupied structure. That's not a holiday, that's a felony." He scoffed. "You always talk like a textbook. It was a splash of lighter fluid. It makes the color pop. Mom loved it." I closed my eyes. The image of miso at the doorway flashed white-hot and then steadied into something colder. "The policy is suspended," I said. "The bank has been notified of collateral risk." There was a beat of silence. Then he laughed. "You can't just do that. You're being crazy. The shed is insured." I said, "Not anymore." He exhaled through his nose like a bull deciding whether to charge. "Mom's going to lose it." I thought of the linen jumpsuit and the orchids at departures. I thought of the word non-refundable. I said, "She asked me to handle it. I am." I hung up. The hospital lights dimmed toward evening. A nurse checked my vitals and asked about my pain. I told her the truth about the ribs and nothing about the rest. I opened the fire department's public records portal and filed a citizen supplement attaching the footage. I requested an addendum noting potential use of Exemerant. I didn't editorialize, I itemized. The heart monitor kept time. Beep, beep, beep. In Fort Collins, a red banner had already altered the temperature of a living room. In Denver, I watched the sun lower behind the mountains and felt the ledger begin to balance, not with rage, but with arithmetic. I opened Instagram one more time. Diane had posted from the airport lounge. Champagne flute tilted toward the camera. Caption, "Hard year, but we rise. #blessed. I zoomed into the reflection on the glass behind her. Caleb's white cuff was darker now, a blooming stain he hadn't noticed. I set the phone down on my chest and let the antiseptic air fill my lungs in careful measures. They thought I would sweep the embers into a paragraph and call it weather. They forgot what I do for a living. I don't fix stories. I expose them. By the time their flight pushed back from the gate at Denver International, the algorithm had already done what algorithms do. It did not care about champagne flutes or hashtags. It cared about risk. The red banner on the insurance dashboard had triggered a cascade. A suspended hazard policy is a small line item until it isn't, until it touches collateral, until it touches a note. My email to Front Range Credit Union had been opened at 6:42 p.m. I know because compliance systems leave footprints. Read receipts are the polite version. Audit logs are the truth. At 7:03 p.m., the mortgage account status changed from current to review. At 7:19 p.m., an automated force-placed insurance notice was queued. Force-placed insurance is expensive and ugly. It protects the bank, not the borrower. It is the financial equivalent of a lock snapping shut. I lay in the ICU and watched the timestamps roll in like weather updates. I did not feel triumphant. I felt precise. Caleb texted at 30,000 feet. Wi-Fi finally working. Mom says you're overreacting. We'll deal with it when we get back. I typed once and erased it. Typed again. You don't have coverage. The bank does not wait for vacations. The 3 dots blinked, then stopped. I imagined the cabin lights dimmed, the aisle crowded with carts, my mother's mouth tightening as the world refused to rearrange itself around her itinerary. I opened the Fort Collins police portal and saw my supplement marked Received. An investigator had added a note. Review footage for potential accelerant. Small words, heavy consequences. I closed the laptop and let the pain medication soften the edges of my ribs. I thought about Miso's bowl by the sliding door and the way she circled twice before settling. I had not found her in the footage beyond that white flare and the smoke. The fire department's report listed canine unaccounted for. The phrase felt bureaucratic and cruel. Unaccounted for, as if love were an invoice. At 10:12 p.m., my phone rang. Diane. I answered. The background noise was not airport hum anymore. It was a resort lobby, marble echo, distant laughter, a piano attempting elegance. Lila, she began, voice tight. I just got an email from the bank. Something about insurance and default. This is absurd. Call them. Fix it. I watched the ceiling tiles and counted the tiny holes. The policy is under investigation, I said. When coverage is suspended, the lender has rights. You know this. You're the one who taught me to read contracts. Her breath hitched, then sharpened. You blindsided us, on purpose. We are family. I swallowed. Family doesn't pour accelerant into a backyard and call it content. There was a silence that had weight. Then Caleb's voice cut in, muffled but angry. Tell her to stop trying to be a hero. It was a splash of lighter fluid. No one got hurt. I closed my eyes. No one got hurt, I repeated softly. Miso is unaccounted for. Diane exhaled like she was being inconvenienced by a weather delay. We will put up more flyers. Don't make this bigger than it is. I let the word settle. In her world, scale is determined by comfort. I said, I didn't make it bigger. You did. I documented it. She shifted tactics, the old pivot. You're always so cold, Lila, always calculating. Is that how you want to live, counting and punishing? The monitor beside me kept its patient rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. I thought about the studio apartment and the wires I transferred on the 1st of every month. I thought about the Lexus key fob on the kitchen counter and the way Caleb tossed it without looking. Counting kept the lights on, I said. Counting is how I learned who was paying for what. Her voice broke, not with remorse, but with strain. The bank says if we don't provide proof of coverage in 10 days, they'll accelerate the loan. Accelerate. The word sounded like a car engine revving in neutral. I pictured the Craftsman with its sagging porch and the hydrangeas I planted the year after Dad died. I pictured the shed's black rectangle against the fence. I felt the ledger in my chest tilt toward even. "I can't fabricate proof of coverage," I said. "That would be fraud. You asked me to handle it. I handled it." Caleb swore. "You're going to cost Mom the house." I opened my eyes and stared at the IV line taped to my hand. The tape was fraying at the edges. I said, "You cost Mom the house when you aimed a firework at it." I ended the call before my voice could do anything dramatic. The night settled deep and blue. Nurses moved like quiet constellations. I opened my banking app and watched the Lexus autopay attempt and fail. Insufficient authorization. The truck insurance tried next, declined. A small cascade of ordinary consequences. I didn't feel joy. I felt the absence of obligation. In the morning, the investigator called. Measured tone. "We've reviewed the footage, Ms. Moreno. There are indicators of accelerant use. We'll be requesting statements." I provided times, file names, the location of the extinguisher on the fence post. I did not editorialize. I itemized. He paused once. "I'm sorry about your dog," he said. The apology landed somewhere soft and sore. "Thank you," I replied. When the call ended, I looked at the window. Denver sunlight climbed the buildings in clean lines. 3 days later, I was discharged with a brace and a packet of instructions. I did not go back to the Craftsman. I signed a short-term lease on a quiet apartment in Lakewood with a balcony that faced west. The rain came in the afternoons and rinsed the streets until they looked new. I placed Miso's collar, recovered from the yard by a neighbor who texted me with a photo, on the mantel. The leather was singed at the edges. I set her bowl beside it, not as an invitation, but as a marker. The bank sent a formal notice of default on day 11. It was a precise document. It did not mention Cabo. It did not mention champagne. It mentioned days and sums and rights. Diane called once more. Her voice was small this time, like she had stepped into a room she did not recognize. "They say we can apply for a modification," she said. "They say we need income verification. Caleb can't—" She stopped. I waited. "You won't help," she finished. I considered the question as if it were a line item. "Help how?" I asked. "By lying? By paying? By pretending?" There was no answer that didn't cost me something I had already paid too much of. I said, "I will not lie. I will not pay for intentional harm. The rest is yours to manage." She inhaled sharply, as if the air itself had turned against her. "We are your family," she whispered. I looked at the rain tracing the balcony rail. Family is not a synonym for access. It is not a password. I ended the call gently. Weeks passed. The house went into pre-foreclosure. The Lexus was repossessed from the airport garage where it had accrued a quiet fortune in parking fees. Caleb's truck insurance lapsed. The police requested a formal interview. A charge was filed for reckless endangerment with a property enhancement. Not dramatic, not cinematic, procedural, real. I returned to work in Boulder with a brace under my blazer. I ran reports. I followed anomalies. At lunch, I walked the creek path and let the water's steady rush file down the sharp edges in my chest. One evening, a letter arrived in Diane's careful handwriting. I did not open it. I fed it into the shredder and watched the strips curl into a small, harmless nest. Peace is not an apology. Peace is the absence of the bill arriving in your inbox every month. I lost a shed, and maybe more than that. I burned away the illusion that love means liability. If you are setting yourself on fire to keep others warm, stop. You are not their emergency fund. You are the architect of your own boundaries, and you are allowed to lock the door. If this story stayed with you longer than the video itself, don't walk away. Subscribe. This channel is for people who actually feel what they hear. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them.